Okay, so once again, you're welcome to Module 3. Remember, when we're talking about network security or system security, you need to understand how the operating system behaves. And you need to understand the Windows operating system, the structure, the command center, the control panel, the processes, the applications, the event viewers. You need to understand how the operating system works and how processes are being managed. And then when we go to Linux operating system, you need to understand that as well, because that is these are fundamentals when it comes to network security or Windows security, system security. All right. So so today basically we'll be looking at Windows, and in the Windows we're going to be we're starting with DIX operating system. Disk operating system. All right, and we said the disk operating system is an operating system that the computer uses to enable the data storage devices to read and write files. So the DOS provides a file system which organizes the files in a specific way on the disk. So MS-DOS, created by Microsoft, used a command line as the interface for people to create programs and manipulate data files. So DOS commands are shown in bold text in a given command. Now, when the operating system started, it started with DOS, right? And everything that is done you play you to prefer the GUI as against the MS-DOS. So from there we had a newer versions, which is the Windows NT, you know, the Windows NT. So and Windows NT actually was later upgraded, you know. So the whole idea is that today many things that used to be accomplished through the command line interface of MS-DOS can be accomplished through the Windows graphical user interface. Now, there are some commands that were very common in the MS-DOS. For instance, if you do dir, what it shows the listing of the files in the folder. So let me show you, for instance. Let me launch my command prompt. Okay, let me share it with you. Let me share my command prompt with you. Okay, so you can see that so if I do dir, so what it does is that it lists all the directories. Can you see them? These are the directories in my system, in the C folder in my system. All right, so that is it. So I can move from directory to directory. For instance, I can go to, let me say, users. All right, I can go to users. So I can say cd. All right, that is what you have here, cd. All right, cd means what? Change directory. Then you specify the directory. Okay, if you do cd dot dot, that means you are changing a directory above to the current directory. If you do cd slash, you change the directory to the root C directory. Okay, you can copy files from one location to the other by using the copy command. You can delete files, you can find or search for files, you can create folders. That's like make a directory, create folders. You can use the help command and stuff like that. So where's my command pro? Where's my DOS? So for instance, ready users. So you see I am in users. So if I do show directory, these are the folders in the in users. Okay, so I can do cd test. If I do dir, then these are the files and the folders inside this particular directory. Okay, I can find, I can search, I can. So the concept of Windows then was that it uses this command line in order to be able to generate or view or manipulate or use the particular system. Right, so they were running from NT, different versions came to professional, to server, to advanced server, to data center and stuff like that. And then they now produce 64 bits instead of 32 bits. They had 32 bits and then 64 bits. So Windows started gradually moving from one point to the other. And these are like some of the versions, you know, like Windows 7. Windows 7 has the Windows 7 Starter, Windows 7 Home Basic, Windows 7 Premium, Windows 7 Professional, Windows 7 Enterprise, and Windows 7 Ultimate, all under Windows 7. So it came with all these versions. Then you have Windows Server 2008. All right, we have the Foundation, we have the Standard, we have the Enterprise, we have the Data Center, we have the Web Server, we have the HPC Server. You know, so it comes with all these versions. So the version that you install on your network is the version that you need. So you have to know what you are going to use it for, all right, so that you will now install the right versions. All right, so all these are different operating systems. We have Windows 8, we have the Pro, we have the Enterprise, and the RT. We have Windows Server 2012, the Foundation, Essential, Standard, and Data Center. We have 8.1. If you observe, Windows 8 did not stay long. It was not very, it came in, but there were some issues, and then quickly they changed to Windows 8.1. All right, there were some issues, and quickly they upgraded to Windows 8.1. Then we had Windows Server 2012. Then we have Windows 10. All right, then Windows Server 2016. So these are like the different operating systems under the Windows and the versions. Now, before Windows 7, we had Windows 95, Windows 98, Windows 2000, Windows Millennium, Windows NT, and things like that. All right, but the most important thing is they are all graphical, user oriented. So this is the desktop environment for the Windows. It's the environment that you first interface with when the system fully boots. Okay, when the system is fully loaded and fully boots, that's you interact with it. So there's always a recycling bin where whatever you delete goes in there. Then you have the taskbar here, and in the taskbar you have some quick icons at the taskbar here. All right, then at the down right you have what they call the notification area. All right, so if I bring my mouse, if I do like this, you can see these are my notification area, these are my taskbar. Okay, so my taskbar. All right, and additionally, this you can get the search button here. So if I do like this, you see this is the search button here, so I can search for anything that I want to search from my system. Okay, So maybe if I say cyber ops, for instance, so it's going to bring for me, you see the cyber ops associated, this is the folder, and I can get the location, I can search for any file or anything that I need on the system. All right. Now, it also has a feature where you can right click. Right clicking an icon brings up additional functions that can be used in the list. All right. So, like for instance, let's say cyber ops. So once we say cyber ops, let me say open file location. Okay. Open file location. Sorry, my system is kind of okay. It's loading this location. Very good. So this is the cyber ops location. So the point is that if I right click, it's going to bring down some other menus. Okay, some other things that I can do with it. If I double click, it opens. I can see my lab activities folder. I can see. Sorry, where is it? Aha, this maybe chapter 1 lab activity. So if I right click, you see there are some menus here that you can do. So this is like one of the advantages of the graphical user interface, when you have to right click and you can get across to whatever it is you need. There are certain vulnerabilities that are there. An operating system contains millions of codes, and with all these codes comes vulnerabilities. Vulnerability is some flaws, okay, or weaknesses that can be exploited by an attacker. So to reduce the viability of the computer information. So remember, we're talking about security, okay? And so first thing most of these hackers do, what they do is that they find out the operating system you are using, and once they know the operating system you are using, they already have studied all the vulnerabilities that are in that particular operating system. So since there are vulnerabilities, they try to use that vulnerabilities to gain access to your system. And that is why it's always good to update and install patches and things like that. So take advantage of an operating system vulnerability. The attacker must use a technique or a tool to exploit that vulnerability. So the attacker can use the vulnerability to get the computer to act in a fashion outside its intended design. So in general, the goal is to gain unauthorized control of the computer. That is, it could change the permissions, or to manipulate the system, or to steal data, or whatever it is that the person would love to do. So the point here is that we need to know that most of these operating systems come with vulnerabilities, and sometimes Windows now makes some common security recommendations, and one of the way is to install an antivirus or an anti-malware application. But by itself, it comes with one they call the Windows Defender. All right, it comes with the Windows Defender, and the Windows Defender provides a suite of protection tools built into the system. So it comes with the operating system. So if I come here and I say Windows Defender, look at it. Can you see it? This is Windows Defender. I can launch it here, and then it will show you the firewall and security that Windows has. So they put that in place in order to help um, protect the system. So these are where you can now put some inbound rules, and then put some outbound rules, and then connection and stuff like that. So this is the Windows Defender. So sometimes if you don't want to do that, then you have to install what do you call it, an antivirus, an anti-malware software. Then we have some unknown or unnamed services. There are many services that run behind the scene. All right, it's important to make sure that each services is identifiable and safe. So with an unknown service running at the background, the computer can be vulnerable to attack. So how do you know the services that are running on your computer? All you just need to do is you press on your keyboard Control Alt Delete. All right, it brings your task manager. So this is your task manager. So under processes, so you see these are the various processes that are running. Okay, so once there is an unknown service that is running on your system here that you are not aware of, then you know that there is a problem. Or let me come, those are processes. So you can come to services. Okay, these are the services, these are the service names. You can, this is the PID of the service, this is the description of the service. Okay, so these are all the services that are currently running, and most of them are running at the background of the system. So once your system boots, you start your system, automatically it begins to run some of these services. Okay, um, where are we? Sorry. Okay, encryption. When data is not encrypted, it can easily be gathered and exploited. So it is not only important for desktop computers, but especially for mobile devices to encrypt your data. Okay, then a good security policy must be configured and followed. Many settings in the Windows security policy control can prevent attack. Right, so firewall by default, Windows uses the Windows firewall to limit communications with devices on the network. So the firewall prevents other devices from getting into your system unless you decide to open that particular port, or you decide to disable the firewall, or you decide to apply a new rule. All right, so file share permissions must be set correctly. It is easy to give the everyone group full control, but this allows all people to access all files, all right, especially when you're on the network. So it is best to provide each user or group with the minimum necessary permissions for all files and folders. All right, so many people choose weak passwords or do not use a password at all for their system, and it's so unfortunate. All right, it is especially important to make sure that all accounts, especially the administrator account, have a very strong password. And once we are talking about a strong password, we are saying that it must be at least 8 characters. It must have a capital letter, an uppercase, it must have a lowercase, it must have a number, and it must have a special character. So it must have this combination. That's what we categorize as a strong password. So when user logs in as administrator, the program that they run will have the privilege of that particular account. So it's best to log in as standard user and only use the administrator password to accomplish certain tasks. So how is the architecture of the operating system? The system has the hardware. This is where your hardware, and when you say your hardware, we're talking about your motherboard, your processor, your RAM, your hard disk, your keyboard, your mouse, your printer, all those hardware devices that you have. All right, and those hardwares are devices that cannot talk to each other, right? So you have your operating system kernel. Your operating system has two sides. It has the kernel and it has the shell. Now the kernel is the part of the operating system usually built in machine language or assembly language that enable the hardware to be able to communicate to each other. So for that to happen, it needs to go through the hardware abstraction layer. Sometimes we call it the HAL. Okay, the HAL. So the hardware abstraction layer is like a software, and it handles all the communications between the hardware machines and the kernel itself. Remember, we said the kernel is like the core of the operating system. It's like the backbone, is like the main part of the operating system. All right, and it also handles all the input, all the output on the system. So this is how hardware devices communicate with each other. Now, on the operating system, that's where you have your file system and your drivers. All right, your drivers are also like they are like softwares, like applications that enable communication with certain type of hardware. For instance, I have a flash drive and I connect my flash drive. So there need to be a driver that controls uh, the, the functionality of that particular flash drive. And that works with the kernel of the operating system. Okay, so so we have the hardware abstraction layer, then we have the operating system kernel. Then just above the operating system kernel, you have the drivers that are installed there. Then we have the other kernel mode drivers, right? Then from there, there is a communication with the Windows API. Now, the Windows API, now this is like where there would be user interaction. All right, at this particular end, at the kernel side, the users do not interact here. It's the hardware. This enables communication with the hardware. So you see the operating system is divided into two, and you see this side and then this side. So this upper layer is managed by the shell. All right, it's managed by the shell, and that is where it enables the user interface communication, where you and I interface with the operating system. All right, and then the lower end is managed by the kernel. All right, so the two different modes in which the CPU operates when the computer has Windows installed are the user mode and the kernel. So the installed application run on the user mode and the operating system code runs in kernel mode. So of all of the codes that run in kernel mode use the same address space. So when user mode runs, it's granted its own restricted address space by the kernel along with the process created specifically for the application. Now, the file system is basically a way of organizing the information in a storage media. So let's assume that you have a wardrobe. You have a wardrobe or a cupboard in your office or in your house or in your library, you know, and you have a set of books or you have a set of files, you have a set of documents that you want to maybe arrange them orderly. All right, so if it's in the library, you now put maybe based on the authors or based on the topics of the books or based on the category of the books. You know, you have a way of organizing stuff. And the same thing with Windows file system. It has a way of organizing. It's like the shelf. It has a way of organizing the shelf. It's like on a storage media, it creates ways in which you can store your files. So it's like this particular Windows filing system is like creating different shelves. All right, shelves that you need to be storing your stuffs. All right, so uh, the first is the expert. Uh, this is simple file system supported by many different operating systems. FAT has limitation. FAT, by the way, is a file allocation table. It has limitation to the number of partitions and sizes. and the file size that it can address. All right, so basically that's the major challenge that FAT has. It cannot house so many information, and it has a maximum capacity size that it can take. All right, so both FAT16 and 32 are available to use, with FAT32 being the most common, and it has many fewer restrictions than 16. All right, then we have the hierarchical file system plus, the HFS plus. It's the file system that is used on Mac OS computers, and allows much longer file names, file sizes, and partition sizes. Although it is not supported by Windows, without special software, Windows is available to read data from the HFS file plus partitions. All right. Then we have the extended file system, the EXT, and basically is used in Linux. All right. And although it's not supported by Windows, Windows is able to read data from the EXT partition with special software. And then the commonest one we know in Windows is the NTFS, the NTFS New Technology File System. And it's the most common one used when installing Windows, because it can take large amount of data. It can take bigger partitions, you know. Mac OS X computers can only read from NTFS partition, and they are able to also write on NTFS partitions after installing specific drivers. Okay, so those are like the Windows partition. So if you have a Windows, any system, if it is a Linux, you know that you have to look at the EXT. If it is the Windows, you have to look at the NTFS. The FAT32 also works in the Windows, and it can also work sometimes in other operating systems. All right, and then the HFS is for the Mac operating system. Now, NTFS formatting creates important structures on the disk for file storage and tables for recording and location of files. So we have the boot sector, which is the first 16 sectors of the drive. That's the boot sector, and basically it contains, the location contains of the master file table. We call it the MFT. You know, when you are installing your operating system, or when you are booting your system, like your master record that has to do with the loading of the operating system, it will come up from there. Okay, it will come up from there. So we also have the master file table, which is the table that contains the location of all the files and directories on the partition, including attributes such as security information and timestamps. Then we have the system files. They are basically hidden, but you can make them visible, and they store information about other volumes and file attributes. All right, so we have the file area, the main area of the partition where the files and directories are stored. All right, so NTFS stores files as a series of attributes, such as the name of the file or the timestamp. So the data which the file contains is stored in the attributes. This, all right. So by using NTFS, alternative data streams (ADS) can be connected to a file. So an attacker could store malicious code within an ADS, all right, that can be called from a different file, all right, and this is the security aspect that we need to check. All right, so for instance, if I come to my where is it now? Come to my Windows. All right, let me clear my screen. Um, Clear screen. Now, if I do CDADS, okay, maybe I don't have it in my system. Um, okay, let's see, ADS. Okay, I guess I don't have it in my system, but you can check it and then you can find it, and you're going to now see what is there. So in the NTFS file system, a file with an ADS is identified after the file name and a column. So for example, test file dot txt and then column ADS. So the file name indicates that ADS called ADS is associated with this particular file, test file dot txt. All right, we have the example here. But it has to be in the directory of ADS. All right, so you can call out this and then see what is inside there. So how does Windows boot? What is the booting process? And what is actually booting? We all know booting. We say booting is starting a computer, but basically it's just a process of loading the operating system from your hard disk to your RAM. Okay, so there are so many processes that it takes in order to achieve that. So many actions occur between the power button is pressed and the Windows is fully loaded. So this is the Windows boot process. And we have two types of computer firmware that exist. We have the BIOS and we have the UEFI. The BIOS is basic input output system, and the UEFI is the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. All right, so those are like the two major aspects of the ROM that manages your startup. All right, so in the BIOS, the process begins with the BIOS initialization phase, in which the hardware devices are initialized and a post is confirmed. When the system disk is discovered, the post ends and looks for the master boot record. The BIOS executes the master boot record code and the operating system starts to load. That is this particular uh, path. So what it means is that when you press your power button. The moment you press your power button, the the power button now it's like you have opened the channel for power to flow in from your power pack. So the CPU now sends a power good signal, and once the power good signal is initiated, then it authorizes the power pack to release power into the motherboard, into the system. And once the power is released, the next thing is now it goes to the ROM. It goes to the ROM. All right, in this case is the BIOS that we're talking about. So in the ROM, it has what we call the diagnostic boot up instructions. Okay, and inside the ROM, it has like the basic settings on how to boot, and that's what we have the BIOS initialization. So in the BIOS initialization, it has a record, an address inside the ROM. It says, okay, to start, once you start the booting process, go to this location in the MBR, master boot record, go to this location in the MBR and begin to execute the files that are there. Once it goes there and it begins the execution of the files that are there, just a second. Once it begins to load the files, Then it goes to the post process. Now the post stands for power on self-test. And what does it do? It checks for the availability and functionality of all the required hardware devices, like the RAM. It checks the RAM. If the RAM is okay, it checks the hard drive is okay, checks the CPU is okay, check the mouse, check the keyboard, checks basically the input and output devices and verifies if they're okay. And if everything it has verified is okay, it now sends a signal to the boot manager. There is a file that is called bootmanager.exe, and then that begins to execute. Now, as it begins to execute, and then it follows this process. We'll come and talk about it until it finally gets to the Windows login page. But for the UEFI, the UEFI boots by loading the EFI program files, okay, stored in a specific disk partition known as the EFI partition. So you see, when recent systems are using UEFI. So when your system is using UEFI, the booting process is much faster because it bypasses this stage. It bypasses this stage. So you just come here straight. All right, just bypasses it. So whether the firmware in the BIOS or UEFI after a valid Windows installation is located, the boot manager file is run. So the boot manager file reads the boot configuration database, which is the BCD. All right. And if the computer is coming out of hibernation, the boot process continues with the Windows resume.exe. That is where we have this this BCD here. All right. If you had hibernated your system, it's going to skip all this stage and just go straight to Windows resume, and then it comes down here and then Windows login. So it bypasses this entire stage. All right. But if you are doing a cold boot, that means a fresh boot is going to now come this way. So if the computer is being booted from a cold start, all right, then the Windows winload.exe file is loaded. So the winload.exe also uses uh, the kernel mode signing, all right, to make sure that all devices are digitally signed. So after the drivers have been examined, the Windows window.exe runs this particular file, the NTOS krnl.exe, and it starts the Windows kernel and set up the hub. All right, and set up the hub. All right, so this is basically how the system uh, boots. All right, it follows these steps. Now, there are two important registry items that are used to automatically start applications and services. All right, we have the HKey local machine and the HKey current user. Those are like registry. These are like registry is like where informations are kept, addresses, information about documents that you have saved or you installed or you uninstalled. Every transaction that is going on in your network, it goes through these two registries. So several aspects of Windows configurations are stored in this key, including information about services that start with each boot. All right, so those ones are stored in the local machine HKey registry. Then the several aspects related to logged in users is stored in the current user registry. All right, so including information about services that start only when the user logs on to the computer. All right, so all those ones, so the services you run, the ones you boot and stuff like that, they actually loaded in the current user. And why we're putting in the current user is because the system, the Windows could have multiple users. All right, could have different users in it. So that's why it goes into this registry. So different entries in the registry locations define which services and applications will start, as indicated by their entry type. So this type include the run ones, the run services, the run services ones, and the uh, user initiation. Uh, so uh, the MS config tools is used to view and change all of the startup options for the computer, and it opens the system configuration window. All right. Remember that this topic is all about us understanding how Windows behave and the architecture, how it rolls. All right. So um, there are like 5 tabs when it comes to your configuration options. When it comes to startup, we can go for the normal loads. You can go for the diagnostic loads. You can go for the selective uh, startup. Now, what is the difference between the two? For the normal load, all drivers and services will be loaded. All right, that's when your system actually starts. Then the diagnostic load, only the basic drivers that are essential and services that are essential that will load. And we use the diagnostic load, this startup, when you are troubleshooting the system. Okay, when you are troubleshooting the system. Then selective allows the user to choose what to load at startup. Right, and that's on the general tab. On the boot tab, on this tab, we have just looked at this tab. On the boot tab, any installed operating system can be chosen here to start. So when you have maybe Windows 10, you can have maybe Windows 7 or Windows 8. You might have different operating systems here. So you can choose which operating systems you would want the system to be using as its default to start. And you can even start the computer on safe mode. Right? You can start it on safe mode if you so wish. So all these configurations talks about the behavior of your startup when you are starting up your computer. So after the boot, we have the services. Remember, at boot up, there are services that are automatically loaded. There are services that are automatically loaded, and you can decide to stop some of these services or increase some of these services. For instance, now I can come here. Right, so look at the system configuration application. Waiting for it to load. All right, so look at it here. This is what we're talking about. I want to believe you can see. So under general, I put my own on selective startup. Under boot is booting from the current operating system. Under services, so under these services, you see here, I can decide to select the services that I want to be run. All right, I can select the services I want to run. I can select the ones that I don't want to. All right, that's under system configuration here. Okay, so this is it here. So this is the general we looked at. This is the boot, the services. So the next one is the startup, and then the tools. All right, so in the startup, all applications and services that are configured to automatically begin at startup can be enabled or disabled. All right, can be enabled or disabled. So The next thing is the tools. So many common operating system tools can be launched directly from the tab. All right, can be launched directly from the tab. So um, this is how it goes. So how about shutting down the system? Booting the computer, we said, is the process of loading your operating system from your hard disk to your RAM. And why to the RAM? And the reason is because the RAM is the environment where all processing activities take place. All right. So how about shutting down? Shutting down now, like, is the opposite. You are now powering down the computer. So it's a best way to proper shut down the computer. The computer needs time to close each application, shut down each service, and record only configuration changes before power is lost. All right. So during shutdown, the computer will close user mode applications first, followed by kernel mode processes. All right. So if you have certain applications up, so it will close them, shut them down, and there are several ways to shut down. All right. So you can start the menu power option. I just come in to shutdown. This is the menu power. Then I can come here and then I click here and then I say shutdown. All right. Or you can just click the Control Alt Delete and then you shut it down. So when you do that, it gives you these three options: shut down, restart, or hibernate. Now, what's the difference? Shutdown turns the computer off completely, including the power. All right. Restart means to reboot the computer. All right. Reboot the computer. And then hibernate. What it does is that it records the current state of the computer and user environment and stores it in a file. So hibernation allows the user to pick up right from where they left off very quickly. So if you were working on your PowerPoint, if you hibernate your system, when you start the computer, it's going to bring you back to the state in which your computer was before it was hibernated. Okay, so um, uh, Windows applications is made up of processes. A process is any program that is currently executing. All right, so each process that runs is made up of at least one thread. A thread now is a part of a process that can be executed. All right, to configure Windows processes, search for the task manager. The process tab of the manager is shown, and all the threads dedicated to the processes contained within the same address space, which means that the thread may not access the address space of any other process. This prevents interruption. So for instance, what I have here, if I come to processes, this is processes here. Okay, so if I come to this process, I can check whether there are threads coming. Let me do it this way. Okay, if there are threads, I'll click. You see, these are like threads. Or if I come down here, you see these are like threads of this particular process. Okay, you can come down to whichever one. This one I'm using SSH. This is like a thread task manager. All right, so these are threads. This one has like 4 threads. All right, these are background processes with their threads. Okay, so the whole idea is these are processes that are, all these processes are the processes that are currently running on my system now. They are currently running. These are Windows processes. There are 100 Windows processes that are running, and each one with its own thread. Okay, these ones are services and stuff like that. Okay, so So some of the processes that Windows runs are services. These are programs that run in background to support the operating system and application. Services provide long-running functionalities such as wireless or access to an FTP server. Okay, so to configure Windows services, you can search for services and you will see. So all I just need to do is say services and voila, here we are. Okay, and so services, so you'll see the services will pop up. Where are they? I think it's taking time to load. Oh, let me see. Services. Okay, yeah, look at it here. It's just taking some time. All right, so you see these are the services, and you see the ones that are running. So if I just sort them out, these are the ones that are running, and this is the startup type. These ones are triggered, automatic, triggered, and stuff like that. So once in a while, for security purposes, you need to check the services that you have, the ones that are running, and stuff like that. All right. So be careful when manipulating the settings of these services. All right. Shutting down a service may adversely affect the application of other services. Memory allocation is another work that the operating system does because it manages your main memory. As you have different applications that are having desire in order to access their services, they need the memory location. So the virtual address space for process is the set of virtual addresses that the process can use. So the virtual address is not the actual physical location in memory, but an entry in the page table that is used to translate the virtual addresses into physical addresses. So each process in a 32-bit Windows operating system supports a virtual address space that enables address of up to 4 gigabytes. So each process in the 64 bits takes up to what? 8 terabytes. So each user space runs in a private address space separate from other user space. All right. So this is now like for every process, every service that is uh, running, it allocates this particular processes. Okay, it allocates these particular processes. Okay. Um, all right. Somebody send me a message. I will check it later. All right. So, what are we talking about? All right. So, uh, RAM is a part of the Windows internal suite of the tools. It can be downloaded from Microsoft. RAM provides information regarding how Windows has allocated system memory, kernel, and memory. So let me see. Do I have my RAM? Okay, that's my RAM. So let's see. Do I want to make these changes? Let me see. First of all, I can come to my task manager and see coming. Come on, keep this guy first. Where is it? Performances. Very good. So memory. This is like memory usage. So I want to see the details. I say open resource monitor. Okay. So here in the resource monitor, it gives me where is this is for disk network. This is for memory. It tells me the all the, like for Zoom that we are using here, this is the PID. This is the commit. This is the working sets. This is the shareable size, memory allocated, and stuff like that. So you see, for every service that I'm running here, this is it. This for my Norton. All right. So you tend to see that's how the memory is allocated. See my memory here. See the memory here. This blue line. My system is like 8 gig. So out of the 8 gig, I'm using quite a lot of it. Let's see how much memory. I have 8 gig. I have cache of 2.5 gig. Okay, all right. Yeah, see, I'm quite just left with a few in my system, and this is how the memory is allocated. So you can also use RAMApp. You can also use RAMApp to do that. Maybe let's just run the RAMApp. Let's run the RAMApp, and so that you see how it works. All right, so while RAMApp is still loading, Windows stores all the information about hardware application, users, and the system settings in a large database known as the registry. Remember, we talked about the registry. The registry is a hierarchical database where the highest level is known as the hive. All right, that's the highest level. So below that, there are keys followed by subkeys. So values stored, data and stored in the keys and subkeys. So a registry key can be up to 512 levels deep. Wow. And the following table lists like 5 hives of the Windows registry. All right. This is like the current user. Remember, we talked about the current user and the local machine. All right. So the current user holds information about the current logged in user. Then under it we have users, which is a sub of this guy, holds information concerning the user's account in the host. And then the classes root holds information about objects linking and embedding registration. It allows users to embed objects from other applications into a single document. And then we have the local machine holds system related information. And then the current config holds information about the current hardware profile. So this is how the registry looks. New hives cannot be created. The registry keys and values in the hives can be created, modified, or deleted by an account with an administrative privilege. As shown in the figure, the two reg edits, that is registry edits, is used to modify the registry. So to be careful when using this tool, minor changes can cause. So all I need to do is just come here, look at it, where's it, I launch it, then it's going to bring for me. Okay, so this is my registry. This is my registry. Sorry, this is our RAMApp. Sorry, the RAMApp that we launched earlier on. This is our RAMApp that shows us our memory usage and allocation. Okay, this is it. So you can pick anyone and it will give you the details. All right. So this is my registry. This is my current config. This is my class root. This is my current user. So if I click here, all these are run based on the current user. Okay, can I have my print certificate computer programs? Maybe after the class, then we'll talk about it. All right. And then yeah. All right. So this is the for the local machine. These are changes that are done on the local machine, and you could see the one for hardware. All right. This is for security. This is for software. All the softwares that are installed on local machine. This is where. So when you uninstall the system, it comes here and removes it as well. So this is the registry, for instance. So we could pick anything, and it will give us the details as regard it. Let me see, SolarWinds. All right. Anyway, so but there is a caution. We have to be careful with tampering with what do we call it, registry files, because it can alter our system. Navigation, the registry is similar to Windows File Explorer. So the left panel to navigate to the hives, navigate the hives and structure below, and it used the right panel to see the content of the highlighted item by the left. So the path is displayed at the bottom of the window. Its reference. So registry keys can contain either a subkey or a value. So the different values that keys can contain include this. These are the values the keys can contain. Binary, registry binary, numbers or Boolean values. Registry keywords, that's numbers greater than 32 bits. And then registry strings, that's SZ. Right? So Windows configuration and monitoring. Now, whatever we do on the Windows requires certain permissions. So as a security best practice, it's not advisable to log in with your administrator account unless you are an administrator and you are always trying to make changes on the system. So, but there are two different ways to run or install softwares that require administrative privileges. You just right click the application and you say run as administrator. All right, so it will now invoke the administrator privilege and then you can go. Or you can run the application, search for command prompts, and then right click the executable file and then choose run as administrator from the context menu. So every command that is executed from this command line will be carried out with the administrator privilege. All right, including installation of the software. So local and user domains. Okay. Local and user domains. All right. When a new computer is started from the first time, the Windows is installed, there will be a prompt to create a new account. So this is known as the local user. So this account contains all the customization settings, access, permissions of the files. Okay, of the files. All right. Like someone was asking, can we use the 4 gig RAM to install AWS on the local machine? And Yes, you can use 4 gig RAM. It can work, but advisably run 8 gig RAM because of the OVAs that you are going to download and install. But 4 gig RAM will work. Uh, just give me a second. Glitch. All right. So where are we? Local users and groups are managed with this file. The LUSR manager. All right. The LUS stands for local user. All right, local user, and then SR, I'm not too sure of this SR, and then this is the manager, and then it's a file, it's a name of a file, and it controls a control panel applet as shown, as you can see here. So Windows also use domains to set permissions. A domain is like a type of network service where all the user groups, computers, peripherals, and security settings are stored on and controlled by a database. So the Windows command line interface, which is the CLI, can be used to run programs and navigate the system and manage files and folders. All right, so to open the CLI, all you just need to do is type CMD. So the CLI is like the command prompt. Okay, so um, the file names and path are not case sensitive by default. So storage devices are assigned a letter for reference, and this is followed by a column and then a backslash. And then commands that have optional switches use the forward slash to delineate between the command and the switch options. You can use the tab key to autocomplete commands when directories or files are referenced. So Windows keep a history of commands that were entered during the CLI sessions. Access previous command by just using your up arrow keys to switch between storage. All right, so that's the command line that we talked about earlier on, that we showed those directory, make directory, change directory, open a file, search, those things. Okay. Another environment called the Windows PowerShell can be used to create scripts to automate tasks that the regular CLI is unable to create. So PowerShell also provides the command line interface for initiating commands. So PowerShell is an integrated program within Windows. So like the CLI, PowerShell can also be run with administrative privileges. So these are types of commands that the PowerShell can execute. The CMD-let, the PowerShell scripts, and these are PowerShell commands. The CMD-let are commands perform an action and runs an output or object to the next command that will be executed. And then the scripts, these are files with the .ps1 extension that contains PowerShell. The PS here is PowerShell. All right, and these are pieces of code that can be referenced in a script. Okay, so um, you can actually just go to help, and you can find out most of this information. So to see most information about PowerShell and get started, just type help like you see here. You just type help here, and then it will bring you the details. So there are four levels of help in Windows PowerShell: the get help, the ps command, PowerShell command, the get help ps command, and then the examples and things like that. So the whole idea is that you are in the command line, and okay, let me show you. Let me do a sample so that you understand what I'm saying. Okay, so it's my command prompt, right? So if I just type help, all right, what it means is that it brings for me all information that I need as regards the commands that I am going to be needing from here. All right, so cd displays the name of the blah blah blah, check this, the blah blah blah. So all these ones are command. Okay, so if I come to let me see the screen. If I let's say cd windows, windows. So you see I press my tab to complete. All right, system. If you press tab, you complete. System 32 coming cd windows. Okay, system 32, sorry, cd. Good. So I'm here. So if I type help, okay, it brings out, you see, the same thing that we saw. So but it says, for more information on a command, type help, then the command name. For instance, if I want to find about, I've been using this clear screen. See, it's too simple. Let's pick for maybe, let me see, what can we pick now? Let's see. Okay, let's pick this copy. I saw copy somewhere. Look at copy here. All right. So I can say help copy. See, once I say help copy, it's going to bring for me the details as regards how I can use the copy command. All right. This is like the source. Right, I can see indicates this, indicates this, indicates this. All right, so you can do that. All right, in in Linux you can say man. Man is like a manual. All right, you can say man or manual. Right, so Windows Management Information (WMI) is used to manage remote computers. So it can retrieve information about computer components, hardware and software statistics, and monitor the health of remote computers. So to open the Windows Management Interface controls from the control panel, you just double-click Administrative Tools, Computer Management to open the window, and expand the Services and Application tree. Then right-click WMI control icon and then Properties. All right. Now we do that especially when you want to monitor certain Windows servers or Windows systems, or maybe you want to help somebody remotely. All right, or you need somebody's help. So once you do that, this is where it's going to bring you. This is the WMI control that you are going to enable. All right, the properties is shown in this figure here, and basically security settings to be configured, who access to the different WMI statistics. Right, so it's for remote management. Then we have the net command. The net command is used in administration and maintenance of the operating system. So the net command supports many subcommands that follow it and can be combined with switches to focus on specific outputs. To see a list of many net commands, just type net help at the command prompt here. All right, when you type that, then you're going to see how they can be used. All right, so you can have net accounts, net session, net share. Net account has to do with setting password of login for users. Net session lists or disconnects sessions between computers. Net share creates, remove, and manages share volumes. Net start network service history. Net stop, that's stop network service, and net use and stuff like that. Okay. Taskbar resource monitor, we have looked at this. Basically, if you use your Control Alt Delete, it's going to bring your taskbar. And this is where it brought us. Let me see, where's my taskbar? Look at the taskbar here. And in the taskbar, I can see my processes. I can see the performance of my system. I can see this is my CPU. My CPU is very busy. My memory, 8 gig. My disk, kind of free. And then my Wi-Fi. This one is moving, So you see all that in the task bar. All right. So you monitor your processes, performance, hard history, startups, and I think this is what we looked at. Let me just keep it. Networking. One of the most important features of any operating system is the ability for the computer to connect to the network. So to configure networking properties and test networking settings, you need to go to Network and Sharing Center. So let me show you Network and Sharing Center. Where is it? Okay. Let's see. Network. Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. Let me go through it through another way. Just come here. Open network and internet. Network and sharing center. All right. So this is it. This is you can come to your adapter devices. These are all the network devices. So I'm using wireless. This is the wireless I'm using, ICT services. So I'm using cable, it will show here. So it is very important to know how to set up. So you can always come to the properties and you can come to properties, for instance, come to advanced, and come to properties, and then from properties, I can set my IP version 4. You see, I've set it to connect automatically. Yeah. So I can actually set it so that it can pick manually. So that way I can maybe give the IP address 192.168 and stuff like that. But I'm going to leave it to pick automatically. Okay. Okay. All right. So you go to properties, IP version 4. Then you can now assign your system to pick either manually or automatically. So how about domain name system? It should be tested before, because it's essential to finding address of host and translating here. Now, what is DNS, domain name service? When you have an IP address and your IP address is trying to, when you have a domain name, your domain name is trying to reach an IP address, the DNS actually resolves it and maps it. Okay, for instance, I want to go to cisco.com. Cisco.com is the domain name, so it's going to map the domain name cisco.com with the corresponding IP address of cisco.com. All right, so we can use the ns lookup command to test our DNS. So we can do ns lookup cisco.com and let's see what we've got there. All right, so where's sorry, where's my command prompt? So if I say ns lookup cisco.com, all right, so you see it's going to tell me this is my DNS server, this is my resolver for my open DNS. All right, and then for cisco.com, these are the addresses. Cisco.com has this IP version 6 address, and then it has this particular public address. So if I say and what should I use now? Let's see. Okay, now I am within my network, and so this is our domain, and you see, and this is our DNS. This is our public DNS. This is the one that we're using on the network. All right, so that's what this guy is telling us. Now we can type netstart and see the active network connections. We want to see the active network connections. So netstart. Right. So so you see, it's going to now give me the active network connections that is currently running on my system. All right, and it's telling me this local address with this port number is trying to reach this public IP address this way. So these are the activities going on my local machine now via the internet. Okay. Okay, so we can continue to go. That. All right. So now Windows uses networking for many different applications such as web, email, file servers, and server message block assembly protocol is used to share network resources. It is mostly used for accessing files on remote hosts. So the universal naming convention that is used is you will have the server name, you have column, then the server name, then the share name, and then the file. So this is like you are trying to now access a shareable resource within your system or within your network. All right, so when sharing resource on the network, the area of the file. So for instance, I can come here. Let me see. Okay, I can come here. So I say I want to share this file. I right click. I go to properties. All right, when I come to properties, then I come to sharing. So you see, the moment I click sharing, can you see this is the double slash I'm talking about? The moment you share it, it can be accessible. This is the share, then this is the server name. This is my system now. All right, this is the user. This is the path where this particular file can be found. All right, that is the path the file can be found. So what we're saying here is that you have the the double slash, then the server name, that's where the file is being shared, and then um, the path, where the file can be found. How about the remote desktop connection? Remote desktop connection is used usually by remote desktop protocol when you want to when you opened up your system for somebody to remotely log into your system and control the system, install or change settings or resolve a problem for you, and the person is connecting remotely. All right, but for that to happen, you have to enable it. All right, you have to enable it. So for instance, now I can come here. I'll say remote desktop connection. All right, so once I come to remote desktop connection, all right, then I will type the IP address of the machine I want to connect to. All right, so if the person has left his system open, then I can be able to connect. All right, so uh, that's where this guy comes in. So since remote desktop protocol is designed to permit the remote users to control individual hosts, it is a natural target for threat actors. So threat actors, once you leave your RDP open, threat actors can actually make an attempt to gain access to your system. Most Windows installations are performed as desktop installations on desktop and laptops. There's another edition of Windows that is mainly used in data center called Windows Server. It is a family of Microsoft products that began with Microsoft Server 2003. Windows Server hosts many different services and can fulfill different roles within a company. Um, these are some of the services that the server can provide. So it's like another Windows application, Windows operating system, but it can provide server services like the DNS. You can enable DNS on it to do DNS. You can configure it to do DHCP. You can configure it to do terminal services. You can do it to do network controller. You can set it to do hypervisor or network virtualization. These are like network services that can be enabled on that machine. And then file services, SMB, NFS, BFS, stuff like that. You can do that. Web services like FTP, TFTP, HTTPS. You can enable and configure all those on your Windows server. Right? You can also do group policy and Active Directory domains and control. Right? So that is it. So let's talk about Windows security. You see, we did the net start command is used to look up for inbound and outbound connections that are not authorized. So the net start command will display all the active TCP connections. By examining this connection, it's possible to determine the program which is listening for connections that are not authorized. All right, so when a program is suspected of being malware, the process can be shut down with Task Manager. So, and the malware removal tool can be used to clean it up. So to make this process easier, the connection can be linked to the running process that were created by them in the task manager. So if I do to do this, open a command prompt with administrative privilege and enter the net start, then space dash abno command. All right, that's what we've done here. Then it will tell you the IP address, the state that's listening, established or whatever, and then the PID. By examining the active TCP connections, an analyst could be able to determine if there are any suspicious programs that are listening for incoming connections on the host. There may be more than one process listed with the same name. All right. If this is the case, use the unique PID to find the correct process in the task manager. So, event viewer. Now, this is where like most of your logs come into, especially when there is a problem on your system, there is a fault on your system. Maybe uh, like a lot of logs, so you find out here. So these logs are files for troubleshooting tools, and they provide information necessary to identify a problem. So Windows indicates two categories of event logs. We have the Windows logs and we have the application and service logs. So this is the application and service logs, and this is the Windows logs. All right. So all logs that have to do with a particular application and the services that is being run comes here. And then all logs that has to do with the machine itself, the operating system itself, comes here. All right. So if there's a problem, you can always check that. Windows Update Management, and to ensure the highest level of protection against attack, always ensure Windows is up to date with the latest service pack and security. Remember, we said that there are vulnerabilities in this operating system. So the Microsoft always write programs, patches to correct this particular vulnerability. So if you are not getting an update every now and then you might be susceptible to any open attack, right? So from time to time, manufacturers combine these patches and upgrades to a comprehensible update. Sometimes they call it service pack. So many devastating virus attacks could have been much less severe if more users had downloaded and installed the latest service pack. All right, so it's highly desirable that enterprises utilize systems that automatically distribute, install, and track security updates. All right. So good to get this and so Windows computers join the domain. So Windows local security policies can be used for standalone computers that are not part of any active directory. Password guidelines are an important component of a security policy. In the local security policy, password policy is found under account policies and define the criteria for the passwords for all of the users in the computer. So use the account lockout policy in account policies to prevent the brute force login attempt. It is important to ensure computers are secure when users are away. So a security policy would contain a rule about requiring a computer to lock when the screensaver starts. So if the local policy on every standalone computer is the same, then use the export policy feature. This particularly is helpful if the administrator needs to configure extensive local policies for user rights and security options. So the local security policy applet contains security settings that applies specifically to the local computer. The user can configure user rights, firewall rules, and the ability to restrict the files that users or groups are allowed to run with the app locker. Yeah? So Windows Defender, remember we talked about the application that comes with Windows, and basically what it does is it helps in protecting your system against malwares or viruses. So we have the antivirus protection, we have the hardware protection, we have the phishing protection, we have the spyware protection, and we have the trusted and untrusted sources. All right, so um, the virus protection and the rest. So we have like the cafe, we have the semantic, we have the Kaspersky, and they offer all inclusive malware protection for computers and mobile devices. So Windows has built-in virus and spyware protection called Windows Defender. All right, this is the Windows Defender. It comes with a virus protection threat, firewall network protection, device security. So if you are installing these applications, it disables the Windows Defender automatically. So this takes over. But if these ones are not there, then this takes over. But the most important thing is that your system is secure, your firewalls are on, and you're well protected. All right, this will be all. This is the end of the class for chapter 3. I hope you have learned a lot. I will open the channel for any questions. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning, sir.